our next keynote, which is from 0 to $350 million revenue, finding and scaling your go-to-market fit, the next speaker will enlighten us on how to do it. Do you know the importance of a go-to-market strategy? I see some nods there. Do you know how to adapt and scale this roadmap for different markets? No, so it's great that we have this next speaker. The next keynote speaker will shed light on this topic, which is vital for businesses to showcase what they do, differentiate themselves on the market from competitors to drive growth and mitigate risks. Straight from England, with a background in business management, comes the Chief Marketing Officer at FinTech Paddle, a complete payments infrastructure provider for SaaS companies that had raised over $300 million. Andrew Davies is here to share more about his experience, and I'll welcome him to join me on stage as an entrepreneur and advisor for SaaS startups. Let's welcome him.
Ce faci? Bine. Wow, does that mean I said it right? Fantastic. Great to be here with you in Cluj. I love Cluj. I come here at least once a year, have been for 10 years or so. I've got family based here, so it's lovely to be in the room with you today at Techsylvania. Most of this conference seems to be about engineering management and about development, and so I've been asked to speak about the opposite side of the house, marketing and scaling go-to-market. So I'm not sure how that's going to go down, but hopefully we're going to have a quick run through scaling from 0 to 350 million, which if my maths serves me correctly, that's about over 20 minutes. We've got to get through 17.5 million ARR a minute. So let's see how far we go. We'll probably go a level up from that as we go through. So firstly, why on earth am I here? I've had a career of lots of downs and a few little ups. I was a software founder when I came out of university. We built a business, a personalization business that was selling into large tech enterprises. We did everything wrong we possibly could when it went to our go-to-market. We were a solution in search of a problem. Selling to customers, churning, selling to customers, churning, selling to customers, finally building a repeatable go-to-market, scaling, and then we ended up exiting when we were about 60 staff back in 2019. Following that, so that was this early bit of the journey, IDEO, bumbling around, trying to grow this business off the ground, high-margin software business, SaaS, selling into enterprise financial services. And then the business I joined was part of a roll-up backed by Insight Venture Partners out of New York, and I joined into that roll-up at about 100 million and then ran global brand demand in digital as we scaled from 100 million to 350 million over the course of 18 months, mostly via mergers and acquisitions. So that was a really different process where suddenly go-to-market was a lot more complicated. The business was called Optimizely, a personalization business based out of the US. We'd put 6 businesses together, and so the complexity was about these different products and how every one of them had a different go-to-market strategy, a different ideal customer, and we had the complexity to resolve. And then once we put all those businesses together, I came into my current role. I knew the board there, the fund that backed Paddle had backed my business, and so I joined Paddle as Chief Marketing Officer at around the early 40 million ARR, and we're now rapidly scaling to catch up with Optimizely over the course of the last couple of years. We made another big acquisition last year. So in all these businesses, the go-to-market strategy was very, very different. And I believe that once you've established product market fit, and lots of people talk about PMF, you've got to establish your sustainable go-to-market fit. So we're going to quickly talk about that a bit today. And at Paddle, we do this for a huge number of companies, about 4,000 software businesses, including a bunch in Cluj and down in Bucharest, are based on Paddle. It's a billing engine, and we do a whole bunch of these different things to help software founders scale, particularly bootstrap software founders or founders with a small amount of capital who want us to take care of all the tax compliance and all the billing and the localization as you scale a product-led business across the world. So I've got good news and I've got bad news today. We'll get to the good news in a minute. Let's start off with the bad news. The bad news is the market is not great. We acquired a business called Profitwell last year that has a view into 33,000 software companies' billing dashboards. So they've connected to our free metrics dashboard. So we analyze 28 billion of ARR every single year. We see inside about 15% of the software sector. And this line is generally going up and to the right, which is good. But what we're seeing here is a flattening over the course of the last years. I know in the UK, we added the word permacrisis to the dictionary. This idea that there's a constant crisis coming around every 3 or 4 months. It's affecting the global markets, and it's affecting our ability to grow software companies, and certainly the ability to raise capital to grow our software companies. And if we double click into this, you can start seeing, so now we're going away from the straight line ARR growth of the industry we monitor, down into actually the aggregate revenue growth on a 7-day average. And you can see all of these things happening, the COVID boom, the rate hikes beginning, the growth slowing, and Silicon Valley Bank that collapsed. We were right in the middle of that. They were part of our last debt round, and we had all our money in SVB. So that was a really, really busy weekend as we kind of pulled it all back in order to continue growing the business and keeping our capital safe. If we double click into that again, this is now, we can't really see it on this screen, but all these slides you'll be able to get afterwards. You can see the new and upgrade index. And what this tells us is over the last year or so, upgrade MRR has significantly outperformed new business MRR. So what we're saying there is people are growing, but only really by growing from their existing install base. Net new revenue is much harder to acquire in small software companies, and so people are trading off expansion revenue from their existing customers. Now, this title at the top is wrong. This is now the churn and downgrade index. And what this tells us is that the downgrade MRR is bigger than the churn MRR, which tells us that there are more people downgrading their plans rather than just quitting over the last year. So customers, software companies are starting to get savvy to the churn that's going on in the market and allowing customers to downgrade their plans rather than just churn completely, in the hope that as we see a boom and interest rates come down, capital comes more available, that they'll be able to grow more aggressively again. So they're holding on to their customers as much as they can. So don't worry, it gets worse. We'll get to some hopefully productive things in a minute. Competitors. Across our base, we are tracking a 16 times increase in competitors, particularly now with all the wonders of generative AI. Suddenly there's a huge number of application wrappers on top of some very, very powerful APIs, which mean that the competition is incredible, right? The barrier to entry is extremely low. We've got thousands and thousands of talented software engineers ready to build what you want them to build, using all of these great tools, and now the battleground is in distribution. It's in the go-to-market. We're seeing team tenure has gone down, particularly in the major software markets. Tech wages have gone up, and customer acquisition cost. As a marketing leader, CAC is something that's very, very close to my heart, sometimes stabs me in the heart, and CAC has gone up 128% over the last 5 years, as we really haven't seen a major marketing channel over the last few years. You know, TikTok still isn't a major big B2B channel, and so we're all spending money on LinkedIn and spending money on the major Facebook platforms. Right, so what do we do about it? Well, we've got to come back to the fundamentals of what a business is. Over the last few years, many software businesses, particularly in the Western markets, particularly in the San Francisco area, Western markets have become very, very bubbly, and we've got to come back to those fundamentals. So that is a very, very quick introduction. We're now going to run through, hopefully, a bit of good news. So what we've done here is dug into those 33,000 software companies that we see their billing engines, we see their MRR or their downgrade and upgrade churn, and we've started to look at what are the things they are doing in order to build an effective, a scalable, and efficient go-to-market strategy so they can build their software company through this market downturn. Right, so let's firstly just come back a second and talk about what go-to-market fit actually is. So what I mean by go-to-market fit is finding your efficient and your scalable growth method. There are many ways of growing, many ways of winning customers. You can smile and dial, you can send some emails, you can get onto one of the outreach cadences and spam everybody with email, we can go and meet them at the pub, we can invite many, many ways of scaling. But as you want to grow your business from 0 through to the 5, the 10, the 15, the 20 million ARR, finding what works for you in a repeatable and a scalable way becomes really, really important. So I'm just going to use a framework that one of our friends, Elena Werner, who's a fantastic kind of product-led growth advocate and thought leader. She was CMO at Miro and ran SurveyMonkey Growth for a while. Breaking it down to make it a bit more simple. So we can think about the different motions for go-to-market: product-led, marketing-led, and sales-led. Most companies start with one of those. And then we can think of the levers for growth. Acquisition, we want to acquire more customers. Monetization, our pricing and our packaging, upsells and cross-sells, how we monetize them more effectively over time. And then finally, retention. So are they churning or are they upgrading over time? And again, we'll just run through this super fast because you'll be able to get all of these slides. But what we see here is most companies starting on product-led or sales-led and then gravitating towards the others. So product-led is where your users acquire more users. Think Calendly, think Miro, think Figma. Sales-led is, that's where I initially came from, very much hiring an SDR team, an account exec team, and going and selling to big whale hunting accounts. We're going to go and try and reach these very, very senior job titles in banks, wining and dining them, take them out for steak dinners in New York in order to try and close these many hundreds of thousands of dollars of deals. The monetization in sales-led is pretty simple. You name a price and you try and close the contract, but it might take 9 months. Whereas in product-led, users acquire more users. The monetization is usually through some self-serve purchase. So over the course of the last 5 years, I've had quite a lot of insight, not just on the sales-led, but now most of Paddle's billing customers, 4,000 of them, are product-led. So they acquire and they monetize their users through that self-serve motion. And what we really need to see here is that if you want to build a truly sustainable business that goes through all of these levels of scale, that you have to think about ticking every one of those 9 boxes over time. It's really simple in the beginning to start thinking about the one thing that's working. But what keeps me up at night as a scale-up CMO is fear of the next ceiling. Because you find a channel that works, a tactic that works within your existing capital, and then at some point that ceiling hits, and you can no longer acquire customers, users, accounts at that same ACV, at that same customer acquisition cost. And so you've got to constantly be iterating and experimenting for what is your next ceiling. Marketing is a process as you're scaling of finding that next ceiling. So over time, you've got to think about how you play in every one of these boxes. And we're seeing software companies that have just played in sales-led now being severely disrupted by product-led software companies that are allowing free trials, that are moving value right to the edge of the customer experience, allowing people to try and choose and then monetize themselves very, very quickly without having to talk to a salesperson. Now, I'm sure there are some salespeople in the room. Most of us don't like to go through the process of having to go through that conversation if there is a competitor that allows us to just try something for free first. And the same happens the other way. Product-led businesses, it doesn't mean no salespeople, because you can't get through. I think the number we see in our research is about 20 million ARR. You cannot get through that barrier easily unless you start adding salespeople on top. Because growing your average order value is how you really start growing once you get past 20, 30, 40, 50 million of revenue. So you have to add salespeople on top of your product-led motion. So have a think about your go-to-market fit, have a think about all of those 9 boxes, and have a strategy for how you're making sure you get through over time. The truth is, even at the highest growth companies I've been involved with, this is a process of continuous learning. It sucks, and it's our job to fix it. We've just got to make sure we walk into that with our eyes wide open. It's super easy from the outside. And I remember when I wasn't in those type of companies, looking in from the outside and thinking everything must be perfect. And then suddenly, I'm a CMO of a unicorn right now, and there's loads of stuff breaking, and it's my job to fix it. And we've just got to understand that this process of breaking ceilings time and time again is what a go-to-market leadership role looks like in this type of company. So let's go through 4 little things that are useful to think about when you're actually going to market. And again, these come from the data set we pulled. The first thing that I find every time I jump in with one of our customers, and I have a whole bunch of advisory clients, software customers as well, normally seed to Series B, who are thinking about their marketing scaling, is that they haven't really hand on heart defined their target market. Now, this isn't rocket science. Everybody in this room should be nodding their head, yeah, you've got to know your customer, you've got to think about your defined target market, and yet we all become lazy when it comes to defining our target market. When we think about target market, it really does have to be something that's big enough to matter but small enough to win. In his very famous book, Crossing the Chasm, if you read into the detail of that book, he talks about how small enough to win should be that the number of accounts you're going after and the number of customers you're going after are winnable. 50% of them are winnable within the next 18 months. That forces you to focus on a very defined niche, a beachhead. Jeffrey Moore is the author that talks about that, in order to go and win that beachhead and then move on to the rest of the market. And what I think is really important here, and I challenge software companies with constantly, and challenge myself with constantly, is our target audience big enough to deeply understand? Because so many of us, if we're seeing a big market, perhaps as a horizontal play, a DevOps tool or a product management tool, it's very easy to see the billion-dollar market. And investors want to know that there's a billion-dollar market. But I'd much rather have an argument with an investor that actually the segment we're going after right now is only worth 20 or 30 million ARR, and we're going to dominate it and then move on. because we need to deeply understand it. So your ideal customer profile should lead you to an account list and a persona list, which should lead you to a list of people that you need to go and meet. And if it's not going through all of that, I'm sorry, you haven't got a tight enough, defined enough target market. Many people want to tell me that I've got 30,000 customers I can sell to, 100,000 customers I can sell to. Just break it down. Is there 100? Is there 1,000? If there's 1,000 customers you really know you can win with, and there's 5 people at each customer that can sign off on the dotted line, then you've got 5,000 people globally that you need to connect with. That becomes a problem that we can now break down and think about the channels and the tactics we can build a model around in order to go and reach. In all of the advisory work I've done, the least optimized piece of the demand generation engine of the businesses I've served has been the message. There are loads of ways of creating a message, and for anyone who wants to dig into the process of category creation or message creation, I'd love to kind of chat afterwards. We can dig into that into deep. I'm a geek on that stuff. And there's loads of frameworks you can dig into, messaging houses or journey flows of thinking about it. But the most important thing here is whatever method you use, please, 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 please test it with your customers. You've now got that defined target market, and it's now so easy to think that you've got a narrative and a message that works. When I first walked into Paddle, they'd just gone through a process. They spent $250,000. Is this recorded? They spent $250,000 on a new category, and they were calling themselves a revenue delivery platform, which I didn't know what it was, didn't know what it meant, couldn't understand it. And so I went into Gong, which is a call recording software for all of our sales reps, and I listened and watched our sales reps pitch to prospects, and they'd say things like this. Well, our leaders have decided to come up with the phrase revenue delivery platform, so let me explain to you what that really means. Or our marketing team have rebranded us as a revenue delivery platform, so let me help you understand what that actually means. There was a massive lack of confidence. It wasn't resonating in the market. And the problem was, in that cycle, they'd spent 250 grand on the category creation, and the marketing team had been refused $250 to test the message with a subset of customers. So one of the things we do really frequently, a friend of mine runs a company called Winter, W-Y-N-T-E-R, PEP, and it's a message testing tool for B2B. And you just load up panels of your target market, your exact ICP, your exact personas, and they give you qualitative feedback on your message. And we do this with our landing pages and our emails, and make sure we're constantly learning, not just from the conversations, but from studies and panels of what's working. So message, we've got to get the correct message to resonate with that target market. Now, channels and tactics. We've got 20 minutes here this afternoon, and we'd need 2 hours just to go through channels and tactics. So we're going to skip right through that. I'll geek out with you all afternoon if you want to talk channels and tactics. Very, very happy to do that. But let's not stop here, because we're trying to go a level up here to make something that's useful for as many people as possible. And then it comes down to a measurement framework. As a marketer who biases often on the comms and creative side rather than the ops and demand gen side, boy, oh boy, measurement trips me up lots. And I've now got a fantastic RevOps team that help me with this. And yes, we need to measure all of the normal acronyms, the average contract value, the customer acquisition cost, the lifetime value, the return on ad spend. All of those things are important to measure. But in the companies we look at that scale very, very fast, there's one thing that we pull out that I think is really important to notice. It's absolutely vital that you as a go-to-market leader resist the false dichotomies of investing in brand versus investing in demand gen. When we came to October, November, I had a whole bunch of marketing leaders who I'd talk with, and we bounced questions off each other, and everyone was cost-cutting. In my world, all the VC-backed companies were having to trim their costs in their go-to-market. And the question that people were asking was, how much are you cutting off your brand budget? How much are you biasing towards your demand gen budget? And as marketing leaders, really, we've got 2 time frames for measurement. We've got this quarter's pipeline, and then we've got the airy-fairy sometime in the future. And we've got to balance those 2 things all the time. But it's so important that we resist the false dichotomy of brand versus demand. The stuff that I've been involved with over the last couple of years that I'm most proud of has punched on every level. It's built our brand as well as captured demand in the moment. Because the truth is, unless you invest in brand, you pay the price in your customer acquisition cost for every single month of your future. And so you've got to start building that perception. And I think about it like this, that our jobs are to know the target market and do something, a message that's relevant, that's resonant, that gathers time from our target market, gathers attention, and that enables a brand outcome. It changes their thoughts, their perceptions, how they perceive us, and it gathers action. And making sure we wrap up all of those three things together in one campaign, in one motion is vital. We recently sent a device to space and filmed it. We've solved global tax compliance and billing for every nationality in the world for our software customers. And so we thought, why not send a device to space and prove that we can take a payment in space to show we can now do it from the ISS. We can, a bit of a brandy campaign. But underneath it, we had an ABM play that's delivered $6-7 million of pipeline over the course of the last 2 months. So it was making sure that the brand and the demand focus of that go-to-market motion was entirely intertwined. Right. Finally, before we come into land, if you've done all of this good stuff and growth is really still hard to come by, there are a few things that we are seeing in our market that we pull out as recommendations and that leaders constantly are iterating on and working on. Now, some of these are a bit geeky and some of these are a bit technical, but if you've done all of the obvious above things and you hand on heart have a defined target market, you can go and win a message that you know is resonating, a bunch of channels and tactics that you're measuring against the investment you're making, then here's a few things just to leave with you today that we are seeing work. The first thing is, in this world of a perma-crisis, the winners are nimble to change their segment focus, even month by month and quarter by quarter. When COVID happened, Paddle was serving this global software audience. We could see the markets shut down and open in different geos around the world as different legislation went in place and different health organizations changed how people could go about doing their business. And the winners, the people who captured the tailwinds, were able to refocus their internationalization on the markets which were open, or perhaps if they were serving collaboration, etc., the markets that were closed and therefore were investing into collaboration tools and things on the cloud. So winners are nimble to change their segment, constantly testing which one of these segments is most lucrative for us. Secondly, it sounds super obvious, but making sure that you dig into the detail of your churn rate. So most of our data set is kind of low-value B2B, high-value B2C, so somewhere between $1 a month and maybe $1,000 a month. That's kind of most of our base is that kind of fit. And there are really two types of churn. There's voluntary churn and there's involuntary churn. And involuntary churn is credit card failures or bank accounts not having enough money in them, and especially in this difficult economic time, that often happens. And there are simple tools, smart dunning you can put in place. It's a bit boring. Marketers don't get excited about it. It's not creative. But solving your dunning process in every territory around the world can save about 20% of those involuntary churns. And there's voluntary churn, which is where someone says, I am going to quit. I'm leaving you. And in those environments, in this segment, there's a whole load you can do too. One of our products, and this is something we advise loads of people on, is cancellation flows. Because our data says that when you hit cancel on a software product, you've got about 18 seconds to change that person's mind. So in that 18 seconds, what are you doing? How are you adding a little bit of friction into that process in order to get some insight? And so what we do is we put cancellation flows in front of people. Why are you canceling? Give us a reason. Let's have some insight that we can take back into our product team. And did you like anything about the product at all? Let's frame this positively before we then ask you, do you want to pause your plan? Do you want to downgrade for a little bit? Do you want to just maybe come down to a server-only plan rather than the dashboard plan you've got? So tactical methods to drive reduced churn. Then customer growth. We saw in the data up front that those who were growing more from their install base than they were from new customer acquisition. So if you're in a world and a market where new customer acquisition is hard, you've got to get in a room and start thinking about how you drive increased growth from your install base. Now, there's a whole bunch of ways of doing this. Pricing is one, multi-product is another. We see multi-product companies grow at 30 to 50% faster rate than single product companies. When you've got the ability to turn multiple levers to upsell and cross-sell, then you've got some real power. Now, building new products is really hard, and so one easy way of doing this is to add on. Put a price around your premium services, your premium install package, your premium support. Start separating out the features that only 30, 40% of your users use and put another cost on it. Divide your product up so you can actually monetize more effectively within your existing base. And then pricing. Our business has got the definitive SaaS pricing experts. They've done the pricing behind Drift and Canva and Airbase and everybody. We do more pricing research than anyone else in the industry. This is just one example. If you are selling into global markets and you're not adopting different price points in those markets, you're leaving money on the table. The Nordics pays 30% more. Southeast Asia pays between 20 and 30% less. So think about how you're not just doing cosmetic localization, but you're using different payment gateways, and you're using different price points for every one of those local regions. Pricing's hard. Pricing is not hard, it's just a process. And then finally, I'll leave you this one thought. In a battleground where we're all in the world of distribution and fighting with competitors to get audience and get attention, if it's hard to get new customers and acquire new customers, why don't you end this downturn with the most free users, the biggest audience? Our metrics dashboard, it's a free product. It's getting signups every single day. We're acquiring an audience we can monetize later. 33,000 customers use it right now. And then we're spending loads of time and loads of attention building out episodic shows. If you go on paddle.com/studios, you'll see 9 different shows about how to build SaaS companies better, faster, cheaper, safer. These are high production stuff. When we did the acquisition last year, we put an award-winning documentary team behind the scenes and filmed the whole acquisition process. They filmed the deal room and put it out there for our software founders. We're not expecting these to monetize and turn into customers right away, but we want to know that we have a software audience, a software founder audience that we can sell to later. So that's enough for me. We're going to call it a wrap here. Your job is to cuddle with all of this chaos, not to run away from it. The market's difficult. There's ways through it. You've got to focus on the fundamentals. Here's some of the stuff we do. I'm super happy to chat through any of this later. Our thesis is that if the software market grows faster, we'll take a small piece of it. And so we're always in conversations to help founders, many like yourself, grow more effectively, grow more scalably, and grow more efficiently. Really appreciate being with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You'll find Andrew in the networking area. So we have to cuddle with chaos.